At the sentencing hearing, Brian and his defense counsel were not speaking with one another. Brian looked angry, so I knew that there was an issue. We were told that Brian wanted to withdraw his plea. He wanted to go to trial. It was my perception that Brian had 6 weeks since the plea date to think about serving 28 years in prison. Keep in mind, he had not been alive for 28 years, so I don't think he could get his head around the fact that he would serve more time in prison than he had been on this earth. My initial thought was I had told Marty it was going to be over today, and that may not happen. The courtroom was filled with tension. Many of Marty's family members were very upset.
Everyone who had traveled from miles and miles and spent a lot of money on plane tickets was like, oh my gosh, you know, he's gonna change his plea right here.
It was decided that we would go in court and that Brian would tell the judge the reasons why he wanted to withdraw his plea. Brian simply told him it was the pressure and that it was too much time. The judge tells him that those are not sufficient reasons to withdraw his plea. We then moved on to the victims' statements and their family members.
I was almost excited to be able to talk to him.
I will never understand why you did this to my mom. You put my entire family through something that no family should ever have to go through. And you put me through something that a 15-year-old especially should never have to go through.
I looked at him straight in the face the entire time I was talking. I got to tell him how strong our family was. And even though he pretended like he wasn't listening, he wouldn't look at me, I knew that he heard what I was saying. I finally felt powerful towards him.
The most powerful part to me was when Marty stood up and faced the man that tried to kill her. She said to Brian, "I was nothing but nice to you," and asking him, "Why did you do this to me?" And he just sat there, no response.
The judge asked Brian if he had anything to say before he gave him his sentence. The attorneys came back and said that he had nothing to say.
That he has the right to say nothing is very hard. It feels like he should at least owe us an explanation.
Hopefully one day he'll communicate why he did it. I think it would help us all understand that it wasn't just a random event, that there was some motive behind it, some reason why it happened.
The judge followed the plea agreement and sentenced Brian to 28.5 years in the Kansas prison system.
I felt like we had a big team working together that made things right. Great detectives, great attorney, great family support, great friends.
I'm so proud of my mom. I need to become more like her and the person that she is. I need to have her work ethic and her personality and just to be a likable person so that if anything like that happened to me, that I would be able to make it through it like she did. I'm so thankful for the people at my mom's work that stepped up. It wasn't just like someone is missing from work. It was that one of their friends hadn't shown up and they were wondering why. I think that the coworkers were definitely like my mom's angels.
I don't think any of us consider ourselves heroes in this. It's Marty's the hero. She could have decided this thing can beat me, and it's made her an amazing person.
I think the kickboxing, it initially started as just something to push myself a little further, working out. I knew that that was going to be a key role in getting back to my regular life. I do have scars. I have all across my neck still. I tend to probably pull my hair forward and cover it up. I still have tingling down the left side. My face feels like a mannequin from here on. and my ear's very tight. So it's always a reminder, for sure.
I think she's still dealing with the emotional part of it, that it's never going to be something that we can just put in the past, even though it's over with and he's in jail and everything, that it's still there.
I think about the attack and the event a lot. How is someone 26 and how do they get to a level that they could be that vicious and be capable of doing those things? If I could ask Pennington anything, it would be why or what were you doing? And yes, just why.
Melody and Gary Ferris were married for 38 years. They lived on a working farm in North Georgia that spanned approximately 10 acres. The couple lived in the main house together, slept on separate floors. Meanwhile, one of their 4 adult children lived in an apartment above the barn. On July 5th, 2018, deputies with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office were called to the property for a report of human remains found in a fire pit. Detectives initially believed that Gary could have suffered a medical issue and fell into the fire, but they quickly began investigating this case as a homicide after a bullet was found lodged in one of Gary's rib bones. The bullet didn't match any weapon found during searches of the property. Further investigation led detectives to Gary's wife, Melody, who was arrested and charged with his murder. Now, Melody's trial is underway, and financial motives and infidelity have become central to the prosecution's case. We have the latest from the Burn Pile murder trial. But first, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the man accused of killing 2 teen girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, in the woods of Delphi more than 7 years ago, is on trial. The jury has been selected, and shocking new evidence alleged by the defense has already been revealed in court. We are live from the trial of Richard Allen. Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae, filling in for Vinnie Politan tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a lot to get to. We have a lot of big cases and trials that we've been covering here on Court TV. Some are beginning and others are nearing their conclusion. And we're starting this hour with a true crime case that's really one of the biggest cases that we've covered here at Court TV. It's a cold case that turned into a, at times, controversial prosecution, the trial of Richard Allen. He's the man who's accused of killing 2 teenage girls in Indiana, Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And this all happened back in 2017. Even though their bodies were discovered just a day after they went missing, it was 5 years before this case saw an arrest. And this lack of a resolution sparked a persistent element in this case. That's the public distrust. Because since the beginning, many issues have been raised about this investigation, about management of this case, interviews that were deleted, sketches that were kept from the public, attorneys being forced off of the case, complaints being raised by the public and Allen's defense team. Both of those entities demanded transparency in this case. And then in an explosive announcement, the defense for Richard Allen revealed their theory of the case, one that only seemed to pour gasoline on the burning fire of public skepticism. Not only was Richard Allen not the killer, the defense claimed, they said that members of a ritualistic Odinist cult were responsible. Now, months before this trial, Judge Fran Gull made a series of rulings that only seemed to exacerbate this distrust, and that included a motion that prohibited the defense from presenting that cult theory evidence to a jury. So no mention of Odinism, no talk of ritualistic sacrifices. This was to the dismay of those defense attorneys. Judge Gull also outlawed electronics in the courtroom. So not only are no cameras allowed in the courtroom, at times we're used to that, but Judge Gull also prohibited any use of audio recording devices or even phones or laptops. It's almost like it's inside of a federal courthouse, because this means that the reporters inside of this state courtroom must take notes the old-fashioned way, with a pen and paper. So we're faced with this problem. How will we know what's going on inside of this courtroom in Indiana? Well, Court TV senior producer Barbara McDonald is here. She's there in Indiana joining us live. She's been inside of the courtroom all day for day 2 of jury selection, taking those handwritten notes. So Barbara, you are our next best thing in this situation. Set the scene for me. Tell me about what it was like today and what major moments have stood out to you.
Well, we do have a jury. A jury is seated. We have 12 jurors and 4 alternates. Tomorrow, court is going to be dark, and they'll be back on Thursday to be sworn in front of Richard Allen. But as you mentioned, we are writing notes by hand, and one of the things that's been really interesting to see is how the media and even some of the podcasters are working together to compare notes. And did you hear that? And is that what they said? And did they say 4? Did they say 2? And making sure that we get it right so that we can share the most accurate information with the public, since we don't have any way of recording it and rewinding it if we have a question about something that somebody said. But again, 12 jurors selected, 4 alternates, and we did get to hear some mini opening statements the last 2 days from both the prosecution and the defense in this case. They asked for that privilege from the judge. She granted that. And so they each got 5 minutes yesterday and 5 minutes today to talk to the jury about what this case is about for them. And one of the most explosive things that we heard during that mini opening statement from the defense today, Andrew Baldwin said in open court to those potential jurors that a hair, or rather hair, found in Abby Williams' hand does not match Richard Allen. Now, he didn't elaborate on that point at all. I imagine we're going to be hearing a lot about that at trial, but hair that was found in her hand does not match Richard Allen. They didn't say if they know who it does match or if that is an unanswered question in this case. Now, another thing that the defense said, and they talked with the jurors quite a bit about, is that they are going to be going after, respectfully but aggressively, after the police investigation, which they feel was not complete. They feel that it wasn't fair to all of the people that they looked at, that there were many people, according to the defense, that should have been investigated further, but for some reason, law enforcement cleared them or moved on to other people. We're going to be hearing more about that once we get to trial. The prosecutor, though, said that we're going to be hearing a lot about those confessions, the 60-plus confessions that Richard Allen allegedly made while he was incarcerated in a maximum security prison. The prosecutor called those unsolicited and unprovoked admissions. Now, the defense has been telling us for a while that they are basically the rantings of a crazy person, that he was psychotic at the time, he was experiencing delusions, and that was why he made these admissions. And to give an example of one of those, Andrew Baldwin said in his mini opening statement today that Richard Allen confessed to killing his grandchildren and his entire family. But of course, Richard Allen does not have grandchildren, and his family wasn't killed. So the defense is going to be arguing that there's false information there, that there is information that is absolutely not accurate and relevant to this case. The prosecution, of course, says Those are the admissions of somebody who wanted to clear his conscience. So we're going to be getting a lot more information about that when we get to trial, Julia.
Barbara, that's a lot of huge information for day 2 of jury selection. We haven't even gotten to opening statements in this case. I love hearing that the journalists are working together because it can be daunting trying to transcribe things and know exactly what was said. So I've seen that happen inside of courtrooms, and that's great to hear that it's happening in this situation. That's really unlikely and not ideal for people who are covering this case. The strand of hair, that's huge information, but I understand there was a motion in limine filed by the state earlier today that was big. Break that down for us and how that could impact things going forward.
Yes, so people who have been following this case are very familiar with the 2 sketches in the case. There is the first sketch that was released in 2017 of the older man on the left of your screen wearing the cap. He's got some facial hair and a hoodie. That was the first sketch released, and that was plastered everywhere. Law enforcement took that to Dr. Phil, to the Megyn Kelly show, to CrimeCon. It was on posters and billboards. And then in 2019, in April of 2019, we got the New Direction press conference. And the sketch on the right of your screen was released at that time. There was a lot of confusion from law enforcement at the time what the message was. Are these 2 people that are being looked at? Is it one person? Is the older sketch no longer relevant? And eventually they told us that the younger sketch was who they were looking for, that they believed he could have been as young as 18 years old at the time that the crime happened. And one of the witnesses allegedly described him as having a youthful appearance, which is depicted in that sketch. Well, now the state is saying they don't want the jurors to see these sketches. They don't want the defense to be able to present these sketches at trial because they are not related to the identification of Richard Allen as a suspect, that they were simply an investigative tool, and that they are not relevant at this point. And so potentially the defense was going to introduce those as a way of perhaps impeaching some of the witnesses. One of the witnesses we know who's going to testify was a woman who was walking the trails that day. She is believed to be the last person to have seen Abby and Libby alive before they encountered that man on the bridge. The timing works out where she was arriving at the trails just minutes before Abby and Libby were dropped off. This woman claims she walked out to the bridge, saw a man on the bridge that matched the description of the video that Libby had captured on her cell phone, and that as the woman was leaving the bridge and walking back towards her car, she passed 2 young girls who she believes were Abby and Libby. And so it's possible that those sketches were going to be used as a way of impeaching her testimony. But again, the state is asking the judge to not allow that. Those motions are going to be heard on Thursday morning. The jury is going to return on Thursday. They'll be sworn in front of Richard Allen, and then they will be excused to be transported to their hotel, which will be near Delphi. There are no real hotels in Delphi or the immediate area. They're probably going to be 20 to 30 minutes away. They're not letting us know where they're going to be housed, obviously, for their safety and to protect their privacy. But those motions should be happening on Thursday morning. And then on Friday morning, we are going to begin with opening statements in Carroll County, the county where this happened. Nearly 7 years ago, these girls went out for that walk, disappeared, and were found dead the following day. A lot of people are going to be watching this. The media and the people who are attending these days, this jury selection and the trial, we are trying to get as much information into our notebooks as we possibly can to bring that to you as accurately as we can. Because other than a transcript that might be available at the end of this trial, there will not be any audio recordings released. There will not be any pictures, any videos, any electronic transmission of this trial at all, Julia.
And Barbara, we're so fortunate that you are there. You're inside of the courtroom. You can share with us what you can about what's going on. But of course, there's a lot of disappointment to go around that a trial that's this big, that was so carefully followed, is not going to be able to be shown. I want to ask you about this jury's sequestration, because I got to tell you, I was surprised when I heard that this was happening for this case. Not that it's not a high-profile one, but really a lot of attorneys lean away from asking for sequestration, especially in a trial that's as long as this one. What can you tell us about the backstory of why they decided on this?
I think it was because there was an effort to change the venue in this case. Delphi is a very small community. Carroll County is a very small county, only about 20,000 people in the entire county. And so there was a motion made to change the venue. They decided instead to bring the jurors in from Allen County, which is why I'm here right now. Jury selection has been happening here the last 2 days. But those jurors are going to be kept separate. They're going to be kept away from the internet, from publicity. Their identities will be protected as much as is possible while they are hearing this trial. Now, another thing, initially this trial was scheduled to begin on Monday, as it did, and continue through November 15th. That's 5 weeks. Today we heard from the prosecutor as well as the judge that we may be down to about 3 weeks for this trial. So potentially they're not going to be sequestered as long as we initially thought they were. But the trial, the judge did say, is still scheduled through November 15th, which is a Friday, so it could very well go that long.
Okay, for the jury's sake, I'm happy to hear that, because that is a lot. Barbara McDonald, thank you so much for all of your reporting. We'll continue to check in with you throughout this trial. For now, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us, trial attorney, anchor and host of Once Upon a Crime in Hollywood, Kelly Hyman, is with us. Also, we have trial attorney and former police lieutenant Rick King, and Deputy Public Defender for Los Angeles County, Philip Dubé, is with us. Great to see you all on this Tuesday evening. Kelly, let me start with you. Big news on this strand of hair found in the hand of one of the victims that doesn't match Richard Allen's. I'm surprised that it hadn't gotten out before in terms of information that the defense has shared. But your thoughts on that news, especially as we're going into this trial?
Very strong evidence. Ultimately, the jury's going to make a determination of whether he's guilty or innocent, but that gives reasonable doubt. Now, it's important to remember that the prosecution has the burden to prove the case, but the fact that it was someone else's hair, and who was it and how did she get the hair, I definitely could see that playing a key part in this case.
So, Rick King, we've got these confessions, alleged confessions, that the prosecution said these jurors are going to hear. So it sounds like they probably have some type of audio recording rather than just the words of some of these officials there inside of the jail. But this mixture with elements of his grandchildren that he doesn't have, family being killed, your thoughts on how the defense can use that to perhaps try and protect Richard Allen?
I mean, I think it's obvious, and from some of the information that I've learned, that they've gotten these from, some of them are phone recordings between Richard and his wife, that they've recorded him allegedly confessing to her. Now, if those confessions are mixed with some hallucination type information that he's provided, I mean, the defense is going to be able to talk about how he was really incompetent at the time he's making these, or under the influence of whatever psychotic episode he may have been going through. But just looking at him now and looking how he looked then, you can tell that there's always going to be a certain amount of stress on when you're incarcerated that way. So I anticipate that they'll use that to say that, hey, those confessions are nothing but the ramblings of someone who was under the pressure of being incarcerated for all this time.
Yeah, they've got a number of them, so I wonder if that mixture is in all of them. But Philip Dubé, it's the jury that's going to have to make that determination, and we've got a sequestered jury. You've got this gathering of a jury in one county. They're going to hear the case in another county. My question is, I understand perhaps why they need to have them in a hotel, provide them with food, transport them, all of that, because they're in a different county. But did they have to go so far as to cut them off from perhaps their family, all internet and everything while they're in this trial?
Did they have to? No. But if you're going to go the distance of drawing a jury from out of county to avoid pretrial publicity so that the rights of Mr. Allen are not prejudiced in any way by all the hoopla, if you will, from the trial itself and the pretrial proceedings, then why not go the extra mile and sequester everybody so you cannot cry foul later on appeal should he be convicted? It's the best way to go about it. I mean, they're spending the money anyway. They've drawn a jury pool from out of county. What's the point of drawing them from out of county, schlepping them into another county, only to pollute them with all the media attention, all the news reports, all the social media, bloggers type commenting on the internet, if they're not insulated from that sufficiently. So I think by holding them up in a hotel, cutting them off from all internet access, cellular phones, publications, is a surefire way to make sure that they remain impartial and neutral.
And they are headed to their hotels so that they can start hearing those opening statements in this case. We are going to have the latest here on Court TV. We're going to get to a break now. The think tank is going to stick around because when we come back, we're going to touch on the biggest moments from another trial that's going on right now, getting towards the end, perhaps, of the state's case, the burn pile murder trial. Here's a preview of what's coming up next in the next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the murder of little Quentin Simon, a toddler whose remains were recovered in a Georgia landfill. And prosecutors say his own mother is the one responsible. Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Whenever heartburn strikes, get fast relief with Tums. It's time to love food back. Also try new Tums Gummy Bites.
I love you. I love you.
Beckett's amazing. He's a miracle child. In the mornings, he'll wake up and he'll roll the shades up and, Dad, it's time to get up. It's a bright, beautiful day.
Heart beats fast, colors and promises. How to be brave. How can I love when I'm afraid?
He started getting dizzy. At the first of the year, he started going, I have to sit down, I'm dizzy, Mommy. He couldn't walk straight. His head was starting to be cocked. A month after his 3rd birthday, he got diagnosed with ATRT brain cancer. All you can think of is, the kid's not gonna live.
I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I loved you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, so they can focus on helping their child live.
The fact that St. Jude doesn't bill is a godsend. And the fact that we don't have to ask for help here makes things a lot easier to go through what we have to go through with Beckett.
You're really tough.
For just $19 a month, you'll help us continue the life-saving research and treatment these kids need.
I wish the cancer's gone.
I will be brave. I will not let anything take away. I'm standing in front of me. Every breath, every hour has come to this.
My name is Beckett. I got diagnosed with brain cancer.
And I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more.
The fact that they are researching and they are saving these children, it's so important. We wouldn't be where we are without St. Jude. And in turn, we wouldn't be where we are without those people that have donated. They're the reason why my son's still alive.
You can help St. Jude save the lives of children like Beckett.
With y'all, I get to decide when I get paid. My pay lets me get up to $500 of my pay when I need it. There's no interest, no credit checks, no mandatory fees. And that's why I Chime. Join me at chime.com and get paid when you say.
Mom, we really need to get that life insurance.
I know, it's just a lot.
Did someone say life insurance? Introducing Evie for Ethos. Let's make this easy. In just 10 minutes, Ethos can help you protect your family's future for as little as $10 a month.
But the medical exams are invasive, right?
You won't feel a thing because there aren't any. Go to ethoslife.com, answer a few health questions, and you can get same-day coverage up to $2 million. Ethos. Life insurance so easy it feels like magic. Get a quote in seconds at ethoslife.com.
Here in this case, I listed the manner of death as homicide because we had police investigation that there was no evidence that this was a natural death. There was no evidence that this was an accidental death, and there was no evidence that this was a suicidal death. So it was apparent that he was shot by another individual. Therefore, we relayed to the coroner to sign the death certificate as cause of death, gunshot wound of torso, and manner of death homicide, because that was the reasonable conclusion to make given the facts that we had.
That was forensic pathologist Stephen Atkinson. He works for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, and he's telling the jury about what he found regarding how Gary Ferris died. Now, Ferris was a prominent attorney in Atlanta, Georgia. It wasn't until he was found dead and charred in a burn pit on his own property. Now, a year after his body was discovered, it's then that his wife, Melody, was charged with his murder, and she's on trial. And since that trial has begun, there's been a lot of discussion about the family dynamics. They had 4 adult children. There have been a lot of them on the stand, and the state has made it known through those witnesses that Melody had a long history of affairs while she was still married and living with her husband, Gary. But the defense has fired back, making it clear Gary had a few extramarital affairs of his own. Today, 2 different paramours took the stand. Melody's former lover, Ted Wiley, and Gary's former legal assistant, Angela Phillips. Both of them had testimony in front of this jury about what they know about the parties in this case. But is this testimony that the jury will find impactful? And who will they believe more? And what effect, if any, will these witnesses have on what the jury has to do in their looming deliberations? So let's go back inside of the courtroom now and listen together, beginning with Ted Wiley's testimony.
Good morning. Morning. You do not want to be here today, do you?
No, sir.
That's fair. We've subpoenaed you to come in from Alabama, is that right?
Yes, sir. We would see each other at Christmas and birthdays and Thanksgiving and things at Sherry's mother's.
Now, again, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but at some point, did you have a romantic relationship with the defendant?
Yes, sir.
And when did that start?
I can't tell you the exact dates, but it was probably in 2008 or 10, somewhere in that range.
And when y'all would meet and come together, where would y'all meet?
Well, she's usually coming through town, either going to her friend Sheila's Hutchinson's home, or she would be going to visit her mom at the hospital.
And how long did this romantic affair go on?
Probably 3 or 4 years.
And during that time, do you know whether or not Gary knew about the relationship?
I don't think anyone actually knew about it ever until this happened.
And it was after this that it came out?
I think it did. Then they had were suspicious and things, but I don't think that they actually knew. They had no knowledge of it.
And to be clear, it was an intimate relationship more than just friends, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How many times do you think, how often would you see each other when y'all were together, you and the defendant?
we would see each other at that particular time. Before that time, we'd only see each other Christmas and Thanksgiving, but at that time, we might see each other twice a month.
During the time, did the defendant write you checks for things?
She did help me with payroll once or twice.
And how much money during that time did she give you?
It was a few $1,000s to make payroll.
Would it be closer to $10,000 or closer to a few $1,000s?
It could have been $6,000 or $8,000, somewhere like that, to make payroll.
Is it closer to $10,000 or closer to $15,000? What do you remember?
I'm sure it's closer to 10 than 15. I don't know that.
And she would write you personal checks for this?
She has.
Nothing quite as awkward for a witness as having to come in and talk about an extramarital affair in a murder trial that you don't have anything to do with the crime, but you're still being called in. Let's bring in our think tank to talk about what we are seeing in this trial. Still with us, trial attorney Kelly Hyman, trial attorney Rick King, and Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé. Rick, I mean, this is the most awkward kind of testimony, it seems, because this guy doesn't want to be there. Probably did not expect in a million years he'd be called in for something like this. He's also an old boyfriend. Is it piling on for the prosecution to bring in someone who was not even with the defendant at the time of this crime?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it doesn't really move the needle that much. This is just for me, just irrelevant nonsense that they're trying to, as you said, pile on to try to get some effect out of the fact that she might have been unfaithful. But I think on the other side, there's information that he was equally as unfaithful. So I don't know that this is moving the needle for the jury.
Philip, what do you think? Because we know that it's in fact a jury is going to think perhaps some sort of way about Melody Ferris. Perhaps we as lawyers know that shouldn't be what they're focused on, but it does make a juror feel some kind of way about a woman who has been with someone else all of these years.
Well, I think there's really two issues for me. Number one, in the state of Georgia, family courts tend to reward the non-cheating spouse when it comes to the division of marital assets at the time of divorce. And there are situations where the cheating spouse actually gets no or little alimony. So if she would have filed for a divorce, it's very possible she could have ended up with significantly less than she would get, had she had survived him and just acquired everything through probate. Additionally, this is a classic case why motive evidence is not required to be proven by the prosecution, because there's so many millions of possibilities as to why somebody would want to commit a crime such as murder. And there's so many subjective, plausible reasons for doing it, And what happens is the jury loses sight of the elements of a crime that the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, separate from the motive, and they end up putting too much weight on it. So it almost amounts to character assassination. And to be fair, it would be a shame for her to go down on this murder merely because she was having an affair. I don't think it's enough. So far, I'm not seeing a gun in her hand. I don't see any evidence of GSR on her hands. I'm not seeing anything to connect her to the murder, only to his assets.
You're right. There are several motives, it seems, that the state could go with in this case. And Kelly, to Rick's point, we do have a situation where she wasn't the only one cheating in this relationship. So if the defense can say, hey, this was an open marriage, does that annihilate what the state is trying to prove with these witnesses?
A two-way street. Potentially what's good for the goose is also good for the gander as well. But when you look at this from a perspective that a lot of people, the jury could be really turned off by the fact that, hey, here's this person in this marriage and they're having an affair. However, on the other side of the coin is that he had the affairs as well, and then it was an open relationship. So in other words, it's going to be a wash for both sides.
Yeah, let's listen to the other person who took the stand. That's Angela Phillips. She was a legal assistant for Gary Ferris. She described the nature of this romantic relationship, but she hedged a bit on some of the answers. Let's watch.
He was a shoulder that I leaned on, and then unfortunately there were a couple of instances where, long hours, sometimes alcohol involved, things crossed a line.
And it became physical?
Yes.
How long would you say that the physical relationship lasted?
Well, it wasn't an ongoing thing. It wasn't like planned. a few occurrences, maybe over the course of a year and a half, maybe.
Did it extend beyond the 90s?
Oh, definitely not.
You mentioned that you guys did have a romantic relationship.
I wouldn't call it romantic.
You know, you stated in one of your that you kissed. You kissed multiple times. Right? And then you told, I believe, Detective Kuykendall that you can't remember whether you actually had sexual intercourse with him or not.
Right. Was
that correct? You can't remember?
I can't.
Right. And you guys would meet up and go to hotels, yes?
No, there was a hotel there was a hotel connected to the office.
At the Hyatt or Georgian Terrace?
No, I don't remember the name of it.
Okay. But you stated that you couldn't remember if you actually had sexual intercourse with him.
No, it was not. I don't recall ever having intercourse, no.
Did you know how Gary felt about Melody having affairs?
Well, yes.
And how was that?
Well, I mean, he was obviously not happy about it. Especially since there were multiples. I remember the first time, and I don't know that this turned into an affair. I just remember him leaving the office sick one time. This is at least 25 years ago, because she'd gotten an email from some man talking about her legs and her red painted toenails. I know that he talked about changing his beneficiary information, that he did not want her to get another penny of his money because of the way she had wasted it and kept cheating.
All right, a lot from Angela Phillips there. The think tank still with us. Rick King, what does she do you think, as a witness? Because she says their affair was in the 90s. She did think that Gary Ferris may have someone else, but she also testified that she heard Gary say he thought he was being poisoned.
Yeah, she gave a lot of information. For me, she just didn't come off credible in the sense that she said that she didn't remember if she had sex with him or not. And to one lawyer, and then in the other to the other attorney, she said that they were intimate. So it depends on how she defines intimacy. But to say that I don't recall, I think comes off less credible.
Yeah, that was a bit of a fishy moment in terms of what she remembered and didn't remember. But it was in the 90s, so Philip DeBay, if this person had an affair in terms of the defendant more recently than her husband, is the jury going to split hairs that perhaps she was the one in these active affairs and his were from the 90s and maybe one more?
Oh, come on. How could she not remember if she fooled around with her boss? Who's kidding who here? You know, and frankly, if they didn't, was it even really an affair? You know, it comes off a little glee clubbish to me, like kids who are just going steady in school. Well, what does that mean? They're holding hands, they give each other a peck on the cheek, or they might give each other one wet kiss now and then. If you want to call that an affair, fine. But to me, it doesn't even come close to ringing like a true adult sexual affair. If anything, it sounds a little childlike, frankly. Now, having said that, I did find certain things about her to be quite authentic. So, for example, she never once said, you know, that Melody wanted to knock him off, or he wanted to knock her off, or they were trying to hire a hitman to kill one another. There was nothing like that, you know. But I will say, though, that the evidence about her trying to poison him is pretty damning. But if you really think about it, there's no proof. There's no forensics. I don't think there was any medical testimony, forensic testimony about it. It was just coming through the hearsay of out-of-court declarants, which I think the jury should disregard. And frankly, this is a classic example of why hearsay is inadmissible at a trial. Juries put too much weight on it when there's nobody really there officially to corroborate it and to confirm it.
Yeah, it is coming in through these other witnesses, but you're right, he hasn't faced any charges for poison, or Melody rather hasn't faced any charges for poisoning, but the jury is hearing about it. They heard it through the kids saying, hey, he had some cookies that tasted funny. We have to leave it there because even though we have those two paramours on the stand, there's one major one that we haven't heard from yet, and that's Rusty. He was named in the indictment in this case and was talked about through the children on the stand. Up next, we have more testimony about these affairs, and this time from her own daughter.
Dupixent helps people with asthma breathe better in as little as 2 weeks. When you can breathe better, what isn't better? This is better. This is better. That's better. Dupixent is an add-on treatment for specific types of moderate to severe asthma. It works with your asthma medicine to help improve lung function. Dupixent is not for sudden breathing problems. It's proven to help prevent asthma attacks. And doesn't that make things better? Dupixent can cause allergic reactions that can be severe. Tell your doctor right away if you have rash, chest pain, worsening shortness of breath, tingling, or numbness in your limbs. Tell your doctor about new or worsening joint aches and pain or a parasitic infection. Don't change your stop asthma medicines, including steroids, without talking to your doctor. When you can get more out of your lungs, you can do more with less asthma. And isn't that better? Ask your doctor about Dupixent, the most prescribed biologic in asthma, and now approved as an add-on treatment for adults with inadequately controlled COPD with a specific marker of inflammation.
Hi, my name is Damian Clark. And if you have both Medicare and Medicaid, I have some really encouraging news that you'll definitely want to hear. Depending on the plans available in your area, you may be eligible to get extra benefits with the Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance, a monthly allowance to help pay for eligible groceries, utilities, rent, and over-the-counter items, like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. The Healthy Options Allowance is loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend carries over from each month. You can pay nothing for covered prescriptions all year long, even name brand drugs. All plans have $0 copays for covered preventive dental services, which include 2 free cleanings a year, as well as fillings. They may also have vision coverage, including vision exams, and a yearly allowance towards eyewear, such as lenses or contacts. Even hearing coverage, which includes routine hearing exams and coverage towards hearing aids. You'll even have a $0 copay for routine vaccines and telehealth visits. Plus, your doctor, hospital, and pharmacy may already be part of our large Humana networks. So call the number on your screen now to speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. Wouldn't you love benefits like a monthly allowance? To help pay for eligible groceries, utilities, rent, and over-the-counter items. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call the number on your screen now and speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. If you're eligible, they can even help enroll you over the phone in a Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. And remember, annual enrollment ends on December 7th. So call now. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
This is the story of the one who doesn't just see a broken dock. He sees lost revenue, a late night, and work stalled to a halt. Thankfully, he has the experience to handle whatever comes his way and has Grainger on his side, offering access to technical product specialists and the scale to deliver fast, so he can keep his business in gear and always moving forward. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
People who have allergies will have lots of problems. If someone's exposed to allergens, they can get rid of those immediately by washing out the nose. Navage works by pulling saline in one nostril, through the nose and out the other nostril, sucking out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs. Experience on-the-spot relief so you can breathe easier, sleep better, feel healthier. If you have seasonal allergies, Navage can help.
Navage, brand new look, same great product.
When everything had been kind of sectioned off and pieces of the remains were being placed on a table, and there was a section that was identified as a part of the chest cavity, and I saw something that was inconsistent with the rest of the burned and charred material, looked almost like a pencil eraser in there, and pointed it out to forensics. and it was identified as a projectile from a bullet, from a cartridge.
That was Lieutenant Charles Westbrook. He's with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, and he's recounting the discovery of the bullet fragments in Gary's remains. Now, this was a huge turning point in this investigation, because remember, in this case, the original theory of Gary's death was that he had some sort of medical episode and that he fell into that burn pile, and that's why he died. But there was another turning point in this investigation, and that's the evidence that was uncovered about Rusty Barton, the boyfriend of the defendant. And there's a charge that was made against Melody Ferris for making a false statement to police when she allegedly told them that that relationship with Barton had ended a year ago, and then they found out, they say, it was still going on. We heard about Rusty Barton through the testimony of the daughter of the victim and the defendant, Emily, who testified yesterday about Melody, her mother, taking her boyfriend to her wedding.
Rusty Barton came to the wedding. I knew he was invited. My mom included him on her guest list. He was there, and at that point we were kind of aware that maybe something more was going on with him, between her, my mom and Rusty, and he came to the wedding, and from what I understand, they were like dancing together, like canoodling, if you will, during the reception.
All eyes are on whether or not Rusty is going to be taking the stand in this case. There he is at the wedding, sometimes standing next to Gary Ferris. And Emily described it as awkward. There were times when some of her siblings were upset that their mother was dancing with Rusty. Let's bring back in the think tank, trial attorney Kelly Hyman, trial attorney Rick King, and deputy public defender Philip Dubé. Philip, when Rusty takes the stand, it's going to be a big moment in that courtroom. Do you think this case makes it or breaks it on the back of Rusty? Because he's also the one who reportedly told police at one point, she called me, Melody called me to say the body is on the burn pile, and that was before the 911 call.
Oh, yeah. If he takes the stand and says that, that's the nail in the coffin. I mean, that really is the smoking gun, no pun intended, in this case. And we haven't had that at this point, you know? If he takes the stand and quotes her as having said that, it is game over. And I think all the stuff regarding the sons being up to it, everything that the sons sought to gain from this, the fact that they were taking money from the father, all of that will go by the wayside once they hear that she concocted this whole thing. But we'll see if he takes a stand, because frankly, if I were him, I might not, unless I was given a full grant of use and transactional immunity, because you never know. They could swoop in after this trial and try to get him for being some type of an accessory after the fact.
That's true, because we have this lingering question about how did she move the body. Kelly, now Rusty we've learned that he has recanted at times that statement, so it really could be a wash on the stand. I mean, he's going to be confronted with his original statement, but your thoughts on Rusty and when he takes the stand?
Motive. He's definitely going to play a key role if he takes a stand, because people always wonder, why did someone commit the crime? Why did someone do this? Why did they want the other person dead? And he is the perfect reason why, allegedly, because they were still having an affair, and the motive could be that she wanted to be with him. However, why not get a divorce? I mean, they both seemed unhappy in their marriage. They both allegedly had an open relationship. Why not get a divorce from one another and go through this? But if Rusty takes a stand, definitely can see fireworks when he testifies.
Rick King, what do you think about this case and why there was no divorce? Because it does seem like they were living these separate lives, were disputing about how to give money to the children. I mean, it just seemed like chaos in that house.
I think Philip Dubé broke that wide open because of the divorce laws in Georgia. I think if one of the parties finds out that, or is able to be determined to be more culpable in the affair area, then they get less money. And I think neither party wanted to lose that amount of money. And sometimes couples just stay together.
Philip, real quick about the false statement charge that Melody is facing. It has to do with Rusty. Do you think he will plead the fifth? Is that an option for him? If he doesn't want to say anything, I mean, that could make it more difficult for the prosecution.
The only way he can't take the fifth is if they grant him immunity. If they grant him immunity and he refuses to testify, he can be held in contempt. And certainly what they could do maybe is yank the immunity and actually prosecute him for being an accessory after the fact. And they can use his own statements against him. Now, I don't know what evidence they have to show that he may have been involved in a cleanup effort, as opposed to just having personal knowledge of what, if anything, she said or did, because that standing alone does not make you an accessory. But what I find a little odd, and I don't know if the think tank would agree, who in their right mind would continue this dating relationship with a woman who just burned her ex-husband to a crisp? Why would you hang around, right? I mean, who in their right mind? If they truly believe, right? Come on, Rick, you're laughing. Would you date anybody who was doing that to their ex? Who would stick around with that? You could be next.
Not a chance.
She had multiple paramours. She apparently had companionship. Kelly, real quick, should she take the stand?
She should definitely not take the witness stand, especially the fact of her children coming out and saying the stuff that she did. She should sit there and let the state prove the case.
All right, that's all the time we have for now. When it comes to the Melody Ferris case, we've got another day of trial tomorrow there in Canton, Georgia. And our thanks to the think tank for being with us this hour, lending your expertise. Kelly Hyman, Rick King, and Philip Dubé. Always a pleasure to talk to you all and break down these cases. When we come back from this break, we're going to reveal something else you need to know. Plus, here's a look at what's coming up in the next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, a young mother accused of murdering her 20-month-old son after his remains were recovered in a landfill. The prosecution's case is underway and they have their theory. But tonight we're asking, what is Leilani Simon's defense?
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
What happened that night? Are you not prepared to take responsibility for any of your crimes?
Interview with a Killer, a Court TV original series. Premieres Sunday, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Honey, do you want me to schedule Calvin's COVID-19 and flu shots?
Way ahead of you.
It's impossible.
It's magic.
Schedule free flu and COVID-19 vaccines for the whole family online today. Walgreens.
At Bombas, we make absurdly comfortable socks, slippers you'll float in, and underwear and tees that feel like clouds. No, bunnies. Visit bombas.com and get 20% off your first order.
Your gut is like a garden, growing both good bacteria and bad. That balance is key to a healthy gut environment. Benefiber's plant-based prebiotic fiber gently nourishes the good bacteria, working with your body to help your gut and you flourish effortlessly every day. Grow what feels good with Benefiber.
The only thing I don't like about payday is waiting for it. Chime lets you get up to $500 of your pay whenever you need it. There's no interest.